Hello and welcome to this episode of the GrowVC Everyone Funding Startups podcast. And today we're talking to Andrew Warner, who's an entrepreneur that's made his way from setting up his own business and eventually moving on to interviewing hundreds of entrepreneurs. And this has turned into a collective brain of knowledge, if you will. And this is a little bit vague, but I'm sure Andrew will elaborate in a minute. So first of all, thank you, Andrew, for being on the podcast.
Marcus, thanks for having me on.
So why don't we start off with a more accurate introduction and background to yourself?
Sure. Actually, I think you nailed it. I'm an entrepreneur. Actually, I still am and was. And I had a company that did online greeting cards. And the idea was always someday when I'm an old man and I can look back at the world and I have enough freedom and space, I will hire someone to go and talk to real entrepreneurs, I kept saying to myself, and put together the knowledge that they have and help make use of what they've learned so that other newer entrepreneurs can learn from them. Well, it turns out I was able to do it earlier in my life and I was able to do it myself. And so that's what Mixergy is. The idea that real entrepreneurs talk about how they built their businesses. And what's the difference between real entrepreneurs and, the fake ones who are writing business books about entrepreneurship? Well, the guys who are writing business books and only writing business books who've never really been in business don't understand that sometimes entrepreneurs can be a little aggressive. They always say that entrepreneurs start with big smiles and they're always happy-go-lucky guys. And, that's not true. They always say that the winners really always do right by everyone. Well, I thought, why don't we bring real entrepreneurs on and see if that's true? And it turns out, no. Real entrepreneurs sometimes do bully and push. For the most part, they're great people, but sometimes they are tough guys that the business books don't capture. And I thought, hey, when all those guys, all those self-improvement guys say start with the end in mind, I say, let's test that. Do entrepreneurs really know exactly where they're going? Do business people know? Does anyone know? Well, it turns out that that's a fantasy, this goal-based, goal is the eternal solution for everything. It's a fantasy. It's a happy-go-lucky self-help book myth. In reality, I talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs, and they all say that I think for the most part, I shouldn't say all, there is no all in these stories. They say, I ended up here and I wasn't sure I would get here. It was kind of a twisting and it was kind of a twisting and uncertain direction that I went in, and this is where I ended up. And so I wanted to bring real entrepreneurs to talk about what it was really like, and what I've discovered is that it's different from what the business books say and what the business courses say in school.
Okay, what's the mission behind Mixergy?
The mission is to have real proven doers teach. I mean, think about it, that there's this world of knowledge in entrepreneurship. The guys who've built incredible companies have a lot of information in their head, a lot of knowledge about where they got their first customers, a lot of knowledge about how they got partnerships, how they raised money. All that stuff I want to bring out, and I want it to come directly from the people who've done it. I want them to teach how they did it, and that's the idea here. And we're living in a world where the latest pop star is the one that the whole world fantasizes about being, it feels like, and they're all following the pop stars and the movie stars. I feel like really the stars should be business people, because these are people who are changing the world for all of us. These are the people who are living lives that are absolutely fun and engaging and more creative, I believe, than any rock star who's getting up on stage year after year after year singing the exact same song over and over and over again. Those guys to me are fun, but they're not really where the excitement is in life. The excitement is in the offices and desktops and coffee shops that the entrepreneurs are working in right now, and I want to make them into stars. Thing is, you can't just have them go up on stage and just repeat the same thing over and over again, and it can't be about them. The way that we make them into stars is by bringing them to Mixergy and having them tell their stories, and sure enough, we do get lots of fans for them at the end of those interviews, and we get them to come back in and teach. Just get in there and teach. How did you do it? We've got courses now where entrepreneurs are teaching business, where they're teaching how they did it, and we help them build a following of people who aren't just slavish followers, but who are doers themselves, who are watching and learning and going to use what they've learned. That's the world that I want to see.
I guess also what we're seeing in many parts of entrepreneurs' lives, there becomes a point where people start really becoming receptive to giving back to where they've come from in the ecosystem in general. So you've been running Mixergy for several years now. How has the reception evolved from when you started to where you are now?
Mixergy is a mission, and like any missionary, for a long time I was walking around talking basically to nobody. I would do these interviews, and God bless my friends for coming on and letting me interview them and spending an hour with me, sometimes with technical issues. And I would do them and publish them, and no one would listen. Maybe one or two people would download it, maybe. But it was basically me talking into an empty universe. But I just kept going and I kept going and I kept going. And eventually another person came and another person came. And then this big audience started to form. And today, a guy did, Orrin Claff did an interview with me. Within 2 days, he sent me a picture, just took a screenshot of his email inbox. And he said, look at all the email that I got. The inbox is flooded with people who heard my interviews, who are complimenting me. And not just that, asking for more information. And of course, he had some more stuff to send them. So he did. He came on to do an interview about how he raised money. And these entrepreneurs just, as I said, they filled his inbox with email of gratitude and asking for more help. And he sent them decks that he used to pitch investors. He sent them pitch books that he created for investors. He sent them notes on mindset that they need to have when they go in to talk to investors. And that's a world of difference from where we first started, where it was just me saying, no, stop listening to all the music that you can get on iTunes. I know that your iPod can hold, what is it, 10,000 songs in your pocket. Congratulations. That's not going to get you anywhere in life. How about adding one more slot in your iPod for some business ideas, for stories from entrepreneurs who tell you how they did it, who give you a direction in life that will actually change your life, not just give you a backdrop, not just give you some music while your life stays the same. Same as everybody else, same as it was last year, same as it'll be next year. We don't want that.
And with Mixergy, you've interviewed now nearly 600 entrepreneurs. Are there
Right.
any most common topics that you've addressed or any trends that keep on popping up in the discussions?
Yeah. The idea that you must do things a certain way is a fantasy and a falsehood of people with big egos. What you find is that if you listen to these interviews, you see hundreds of different approaches to business, hundreds of different ways of doing things. And in some ways, it's disconcerting. You know, you want to know that the way to succeed is to have a clear goal. And in personal life, it's just write it down. In business life, it's create a business plan and you just march towards it. And if you work hard and you keep on marching towards this goal that you set out without any distractions, life will be great. That's a very comforting way of looking at the world. When you start looking at these interviews and seeing, no, that's not the way the world really works, that's not where it's at, it feels a little uncomfortable because suddenly you feel powerless. But then another thought will overtake you. And that thought is, hey, if it can be done anyway, then my way isn't wrong. Then I shouldn't have to push myself into somebody else's mold. I can just live an expression of who I am and what I want to see in the world. And that's very empowering. And if the world is that way, then how do you learn and grow from it? Well, you listen to other people's stories and you start to take it in and you start to learn from them and you start to, take a piece from that guy and a piece from that guy and another piece from that guy over there, and you make your own little collage and you make your own little view of where the world should go and use them and their tools to get you where you want to be.
And as you interview these people and talk to lots and lots of different entrepreneurs, you kind of get a very privileged perspective yourself as well in kind of interacting in this knowledge base and so on. So, out of all this information that you've gone through in the last years, what advice would you give entrepreneurs?
The advice is, let me tell you this quick story. I went to work for Dale Carnegie. I mean, I did this back in college, and then after I sold one of the last pieces of Bradford and Reed, I said I'm going to go and volunteer for Dale Carnegie and Associates. And I went to work for them, and I remember watching this instructor. Like, the guy was like brilliant, but like he was like using the word like a million times within his presentation. And I'm thinking to myself, these Dale Carnegie guys, the Dale Carnegie philosophy is what was encapsulated in that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But what they teach is, in addition to people skills, they teach presentation skills. How do you talk? How do you give a presentation? How do you influence with the words that you use? And this guy was like saying like all the time. So you start to wonder, I was starting to wonder, where did this come from? Why is he doing that? And then it occurred to him and he explained to the class, he said, my wife teaches kids. These kids were like saying like all the time. and she like